Welcome back to Mountain's Haunted Garage. We had some paranormal activity. It's in the first part of the video, and you may think it's a joke, but I still haven't come up with an explanation. But I'm okay with the outcome. I spent the last few days reassembling the 71 Nova. It's all about the grinding details at this point. I'm not the kind of person to just throw it together to have to go back and do stuff afterwards. I'll just take whatever time it takes to do it to the best of my ability, and when it's done, it's done. Case in point, like the red Dodge, I closed the hood on that 5 years ago, and I probably ought to check under there eventually. All right, here's what happened the last couple days.
I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I believe in all the mysterious powers of the Ooga Booga and the unexplained. However, I came out in the shop this morning, started picking up the bench. I was putting the Nova shocks back, the ones I took off with the T-bar on the top. It's been bugging me all night that my drive shaft interferes with my exhaust when I put it up in the lift. I should limit the rear end travel down. I decided to measure up for a pair of shorter shocks. I go over to the shelf to put the Nova shocks on the shelf, and these shocks are sitting there. The same place I got those from last week. Those weren't there. I'm the only one that has a key. I'm not kidding. But I think they're going to work fine. I'll get my bushings out. I'm going to adapt them over and see if that fixes my problem. And I'm actually not kidding. This isn't April Fool's. I'm not playing a joke. Those shocks were not there last week. Nobody's been in and out of the shop. It doesn't make me feel strange, though. I'm okay with it. Hanging on the left, I can actually spin the shaft now. I'm just touching the paint in one spot, but that's okay. And the black shocks are a little more stealthy. The extra size in this housing, it holds a lot of oil. I just filled it up. Probably took 3/4 of a gallon. I got my parking brake cable hooked up and adjusted. It's actually right back in the same adjustment spot it was before, which is kind of funny, since I put a 9-inch Ford in it. Now I need to bleed the brakes and decide if I'm going to balance these tires or keep playing with the wheels and tires to find something that fits better. That's an unknown. So while I was contemplating wheels and tires, I dug these out of the shed, gave them a coat of paint inside and out after I cleaned them up, and pulled the staples out that used to hold the rubber flap. The flap was long gone, but the staples were still there. These are original to the car. You can see that this probably had a fuel regulator and all kinds of stuff screwed or bolted to it over the years. That's the passenger side. But they're in nice shape and they'll stay with the car. Between 1968, the first year of the tandem master cylinder, or dual master cylinder, to 1970, you would have 3 blocks in your brake lines. You'd have a distribution block, a metering block, and then in the rear brake line, you'd have a proportioning valve. In 1971, which this car is, first year of the combination valve. In previous videos, I changed the front brake lines, the front calipers, and bled the front. But I didn't pump up the brakes to push the caliper pistons out because I hadn't finished in the rear yet. I didn't want the valve to shift. So when I went to bleed the rear, the safety valve, which turns the light on, I'm pointing to the wire right there, would shift and block off the rear because it thinks it has a blown brake line. So I knew my valve was centered, wanted to leave it that way, so I have not pushed out the caliper pistons yet. So to start my brake bleeding procedure, I make sure my master cylinder is full. I'm actually up on the ladder. I got my screwdriver and some brake fluid, and I know I'm full. Everything in the rear is freshly painted. I didn't want the brake fluid to react, so I, as usual, am careful not to make a big mess. I also wanted to flush out the old rear fluid that still existed in the only OEM line still on the car, and that's the one that runs to the back. It's in perfect condition, and I'm going to leave it. So I dug out my suction bleeder, And this is it all rinsed out. I'm done using it. I take water and rinse it all out because if you leave the brake fluid in it, it's going to ruin the mechanism. I'm pointing again. But anyway, I used it to start the fluid flow toward the rear. Say that 10 times. As soon as I saw fluid on the longest line, I disconnected it. I had already stuffed a rag over the axle tube and I had a piece of paper towel pushed over the bleeder. I literally don't want to get brake fluid on my paint. Then I did the short side, and as soon as I disconnected the sucker, I had fluid dripping out of the bleeder screw, so I tightened it up and immediately simple greened the whole thing. If I had a way to spray water on it, I would, but simple green works well. I was able to, because brake fluid will disappear in anything liquid that's water-based. So that cleaned that up. I don't have any paint damage. Both sides, if that's important to you, this is the anal retentive steps you have to take. If you just want to blow fluid all over your paint and let it eat the paint, well, you can do that too. In this case, I was just trying to keep it nice. And then with another ladder, I used my car wash stick to pump up the brakes, which included pumping the front calipers out so they're against the rotor. And then I literally stood there for 5 minutes with all the pressure I could hold to check for leaks. I did that several times. Today's the day I want to find the leaks, where it's all up in the lift, the wheels are off. I don't want to find them later on. One added note, to establish your initial rear shoe adjustment, it's much more accurate to keep adjusting the shoe and trying the drum in place than it is to try to just use the wheel. The wheel will give you a false reading as soon as one part of the shoe touches. It feels like it's tight, but trying to push it on, it's much more accurate, I find. And after a few miles, I'll have to readjust the back. And then I had to put some thought into my rear wheels and tires. This tire and wheel combination is back together. It was on the Model A. It's been sitting here for 10 years. I know that I tried on the 265/75s and they've cleared. So I had to review some old photos, which I'll add the one right here, when I determined that the chrome reverse wheels that were on the car are 7 inches wide. And I put the 275/65 on there, and I was determined I had plenty of clearance. So I'm going to do that again. I'll insert the old picture now. Because that's the same tire in the picture. So I knew I had mocked all this up before. These are 7 inch, the black wheels are 8 inch. That's the difference. So I want to paint these black, but I wasn't sure how I was going to have to research and find a center hubcap, because I want a chrome center hubcap of sorts. The front wheels I'm going to use, because the matching front wheels that were on this car when I bought it, that match these, they're only 14 inch in the front. That was pretty common back then, but 15 in the rear, 14 in the front. And I don't want to run those, I don't think, so I'm going to paint these black, and I was going to find a couple of disc center caps. An OEM wheel, they snap over the outside. These go on the inside. This is a USA made wheel. And I actually sent a picture to a buddy of mine with the tape measure across the middle, seeing if he had any. And when he responded, my phone went ding, so did my brain. These came in the trunk. I had them the whole time. I had to find them. But 2 of these are pretty decent, that's all I need, so I'm going to paint these black, put the 275/65s back on them, and hopefully they fit on the car. I've been through quite a few cans of paint lately. So much so that I got a satin black the back side of these wheels. And then I'll gloss black the front. Nobody ever sees the back anyway. Most people probably don't even paint the back. I prefer powder coat, but that's not an option today. So I'm pretty much down to mounting and balancing the rear tires, inner fenders on the front end alignment, 2 wires under the hood, the battery box and battery cables, maybe another day's worth of work, and then it should run. I mean, I know it runs. We've all heard it run, but it should move under its own power. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. Maybe I'll get a chance to at least back it outside and blow the dust off it. And that doesn't mean I'm driving it, I'm going to use an air hose.
All right, I got to steal my closing line from Rat Rod Bob. If you watch him, he closes every video, or most of them, with "We're getting it, we just ain't got it yet." Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.